comes from the Memphis School of Preaching, who is from Shanghai. Maybe he has been here. If I believe he would have been here for the last lectureship, but not maybe the next coming lectureship when the students come. And he is from Shanghai, and he knows Brother Bob. So we have a lot of good connections now in China to be able to work with the brethren, be able to preach. That's Brother Tim Burrows standing there beside me. Well, you can see as we are up here in China, we will leave China, and now we're going to go down to Singapore. Now, Singapore is our center of activity, if you will, from where we go to other countries, and we will talk about that. But I want to give really a historical background of how the church really got started in Singapore, the formation of Four Seas Bible College in Singapore, which would have begun in 1965 and still going strong today. All right. We left China and we come to the graduation. What we will do, we time this to where I will go to China, leave on a Friday in China, come back to Singapore. We have graduation on Saturday. And then starting that Wednesday after that, we have the lectureship. So this is at the graduation, and they have us take part in that. Brother Jonathan is there, of course, for the graduation and also for the lectureship. Brother Jonathan, I believe last year, went into the Philippines while we were in China, and we meet back up. We have another brother that will be going with us as well. You may notice him here. Is there standing in the middle, Brother Tim Hayes. He usually goes into the Philippines, and he actually stays a week after we leave, and he goes into Vietnam after that. So we're trying to use that long trip to the best of our ability while we're over in that neck of the woods, if you will. We reach as many of those places as we can with the gospel. But here's a graduation. And the people who were involved in the graduation and the students who are graduating who are behind us, and that will represent places like the Philippines and Malaysia and Vietnam, as well as sometimes China. This brother came to us from Malaysia, and he was a farmer. He owned a farm, and he did farming, but having been converted to Christ, he wanted to not only be a farmer, but he wants to be a gospel preacher, and he did an excellent job, and so it's my privilege to award him his diploma. During this week also, we talk about the lectureship, and then we also have gospel meetings going on at night. Brother Jonathan here, as we were centering in on Christ this last year, the Word was made flesh, and so was preaching on the lectureship there. This brother's name is Jerusalem. Now that's interesting, isn't it? I don't know if I've ever run across anybody else whose name is Jerusalem. But he is Brother Jerusalem, and but he is from the Philippines. And keep in mind that the brethren English is not their native tongue. So they come to an English-speaking country. Singapore is an English-speaking country. And so if they can understand English, they can come to Singapore and be taught. But they must learn to preach, and they must preach in English, and they preach without notes. I don't know, I just noticed that a lot of them use alliteration. Maybe that helps them in memorizing it. But this is during the chapel service, and Brother Jerusalem is preaching on the topic Jesus in prophecy, that is, look for him, seek him. You see him in the realm of the Old Testament. You see that he's the remedy for our sins, and he is the rock of our salvation. So Brother Jerusalem did that, and I believe that Brother Tim may be going this time back to work with him. We will actually, when I mentioned we fly to Japan, well then that's where we split up sometimes. He will go into the Philippines, we'll head on to Singapore, and then into China. Here's during the lectures during the day. You can see the people at the Jurong Church of Christ as they come. A mixture of different countries that are here, including America, and I happen to be standing over to the next where some of the Americans were, but there will be Chinese there will be, that is from China, There will be Vietnamese, there will be Malaysians, there will be people from Indonesia, keeping in mind now that the people from Malaysia and from Indonesia are coming from Muslim-run countries. The government is Muslim or Muslim. And so, but yet they are allowed to practice Christianity, but only to the non-Muslims. They cannot evangelize Muslims. When we have a gospel meeting, if it's in Indonesia or if it's in the country of Malaysia, we have to put up a sign for non-Muslims only. And so we can't try to convert Muslims, that is, legally. Well, we travel inside the city of Singapore by MRT, the metro system, which you can buy a card, and everything just, you can travel this whole city very easily by subway. You can actually get off the plane and go in the airport and get on the MRT, come into the city, which is what, 20 miles, well, maybe not 20 miles, several miles out anyway, and you can travel anywhere. This thing is just really, the engineering of it is fantastic. But anyway, that's what it looks like underground. Singapore, the city, is right above us, and you go underground. It's amazing because you see all the magnificent buildings that are around you, and then you go down and some stairs, and there's like a whole nother city underground in Singapore. And Singapore now has the distinction of being the most expensive city to live in the world. So it's very affluent. That is there. Singapore is not the place to go and shop necessarily, unless you go down to Chinatown, and there you can do some haggling and, you know, from that aspect of it and do that. But anyway, very wealthy city. Brother Jonathan speaking again on the topic of overcoming temptation, and so they get the good out of us while we're there. That is, we're not just sitting around, because they use us several times in speaking. That is, it will be in lectureships. It may be also preaching in a gospel meeting, because we have the lectureship in the daytime, but then the gospel meetings at night, plus the graduate. So there's a lot of activities that are going on. And then sometimes people want us to say, while you're here on this Sunday, would you please come speak over here? And so we're very busy, and Brother Jonathan's doing a great job. But here's the people who have graduated, and they're very happy. The girl standing right in the center, the short girl with the green on the front of her dress, she is from Vietnam. And the lady standing beside her is from the Philippines. And so, but you see the men who are in the back. You'll see a slide on this in a moment. We teach the men to be gospel preachers, and we teach the women to be teachers of other women as well as children. And so they do a fantastic job. Can you imagine not having the women of this congregation? What if the men had to do all the teaching? My hat's off to the women who teach the children and things of that nature. But at any rate, so here is the people who were left. This is on a Saturday, which is the end of the lectureship, and a lot of people had already gone. But here they have a group photo, so you can see the people who have come from various different countries, and these are all of the attendees that were left over. Like I said, some have already gone back. So I call this the mutual fund of evangelism, because it would be difficult for me to go into all those countries, but what a blessing it is that when those countries come to you, and then you preach to them, then they take your sermons and go with them into these other countries. And so what a blessing that is to do that. More people live in the Far East region than we might think. In Asia alone, you've got, well, the world's population is almost 8 billion now. A little over half of the world's population is in Asia. I've mentioned to you before about the multitude of people that are in China. In China, you've got about 1.4 or 1.5 billion people. Not millions now, but 1.4 billion. And in India, you have about 1.2 or 1.3 billion people. And then you have all those other countries that are in Asia as well. So in America, we have about 300 million people, a little over, okay? So we are the 0.3, and they have a billion more in those countries than what we have in our country. And so if we're going to evangelize the world, we certainly then need to go where the people are, right? And there's a lot of people in Asia. And so that's the reason that we're not negating the other. This past summer, Terry and I were in Central America, in Panama and some places. And so, yes, the gospel needs to go to those places as well. There's a lot of people going there. But how many of us can go into China? How many of us can do that? So that's why we're centering in where we are. 53 nations in Asia, 2,197 languages, different languages. Wouldn't you, I'm not even bilingual. I can speak a little bit of Russian to get me into trouble when I'm there. I can say hello in Chinese. But fortunately, most everywhere I go, you know what the common language is English. And I have a friend in India, Brother Joshua Gudam. He speaks one dialect of India. I'm trying to remember the dialect's name on it there in India. It's not Hindi, but it's another one. But his wife speaks a totally different language. And they don't understand one another's language. He didn't understand. She came from Orissa, Telugu. He speaks Telugu. She speaks Orion. So I said, well, how do you communicate? He said, English. And so English is the common factor in all of this. And so what a great opportunity then that we have. Not only an opportunity, I believe an obligation. An obligation. Look how God has blessed us that we can do this, and what if we don't use it? I think we'd be held accountable for that. So we need more gospel preachers. Obviously, we need more gospel preachers in the Far East. And Four Seas Bible College then is designed to take these people from all those Asian countries, bring them into Singapore for 2 years and teach them diligently the Word of God so that then they might go back into those countries and teach the gospel. You think about it, in Vietnam, how much better off it is when Vietnamese are teaching them rather than we going in and under the government scrutiny. They know how the system works and so on. Well, the first evangelist to the Far East was Brother Ira Rice Jr. You, of course, know Brother Rice. He established the Church of Christ in Singapore in 1954 and worked there until the mid-1960s. He also went up into Malaysia and did that as well. His idea was, let's find a country where the common language is English, where it's multicultural, multilingual, but the common language is English, and let's establish the church there, and ultimately also maybe a school where we can train people. So that was the ultimate goal that he had. So I'm looking back into the 50s where brethren were dreaming very big. We need to think about not only our local church, but we need to think about planting churches in other locations. If we're not careful, we turn only inward, and rather than reaching out. We need people with dreams. We need people with visions. And I remember on one occasion that he met with a brother who was a very wealthy man, and he pointed out what his projection was. He said, Brother Rice, you're talking about millions of dollars. He said, no, I'm talking about multi-millions, what it's going to take. I remember on one occasion he called me and he said, Brother Bland, there's a family coming from Russia, and we need somebody to donate a car. Now I thought, he said, so where you're preaching Sunday, would you ask if there's somebody who will donate a car to the family? I thought, I hated to ask anybody for $10. I had never asked anybody for a car. So in my negative way of thinking, how can I get out of this? I said to Brother Rice, I said, you know, Brother Rice, where I'm preaching Sunday is a small congregation of about 20 people. He said, that's okay, Brother Bland. We only need one car. You see, I need to be around people like that who think that we can do it rather than thinking we can't do it. We can do what God, did you know, by the way, the car didn't come from where I was preaching, but there were 2 people who offered cars. We had to turn one down. I remember what James said, you have not because you ask not. Now I've grown a little bit, and an older missionary helped me out. I think I nearly starved Terry and me when we went to the school of preaching because I didn't want to ask for support. I had the GI Bill and $50 a month, and I think we were there on about $250 to $300 a month. That's what we lived on when I went to the school. Of course, that was a few days ago. But I've learned since then, you have not because you ask not. And as my brother-in-law, who's an elder, or was an elder, said, Billy, this is not for you. This is for the Lord's work. And I heard an older missionary from Japan say, he said, I am not a beggar, I'm a financial advisor for the Lord's church. And I said, now I like that. I like that. Because who is to do the work of the church? Well, the church is. We are. And consequently then, we're looking at opportunities. So I look at this now as opportunities. I want to be involved in mission work. I want to support mission work because I can have a part in that if I'm doing that. Well, the foresight Brother Rice had was to establish a Bible college. He also served as the president of Four Seas Bible College in Singapore from 66 to 68, and then they had other presidents. But anyway, the area of the Four Seas Bible College is in the Jurong area. This whole island that you see Tianjin over to the right, that's where the airport is. Jurong is over on the other side. And then you have these sections within Singapore. Singapore is an island, and it has about 8 to 10 million people on it now. Very, very wealthy city as well. Broke off from Malaysia a number of years ago. The English, of course, owned both Malaysia and Singapore at one time. But Four Seas Bible College is located at the Jurong Church building. We're on the 3rd floor of that building. Here you can see the country of the Far East. We have trained people in Singapore. Again, you have helped to train people in Singapore and now they're teaching in these countries. Isn't that a blessing? That we have graduates of Four Seas Bible College, which started in 1965, and at least in all of these different countries, even in Pakistan, one of the most dangerous places to go, we have church there. And Brother Oscar Ali is the local preacher. He was one of the early graduates. He wants us to come to Singapore. He said, no worries. You don't have to worry. He said, we have guards around the building, machine guns. No worry. Come on. Well, now we have guards here as well, though, don't we? but not because of the same reason necessarily. Why Four Seas Bible College? That's an interesting name to me. And I said, why Four Seas? Well, there's a saying in Chinese, among the Chinese, within the 4 seas, all men are brothers. Well, we know there are more than 4 seas, and I don't know why they said but just all directions is the idea. We're all brethren. Now, that didn't come from a Christian perspective, but that is true. We all are human, and so we need to be brethren in Christ. So we train men to be preachers of the gospel and women to be teachers of children. It's a 2-year study, free tuition, just like at the Memphis School of Preaching. They have free accommodations when they come there, plus they get daily meals. We used to let them cook inside the building, but then they got afraid that some of the single men especially might burn the place down. So we just give them a stipend where they can go out back to the hawking centers, and there they can buy their meals, and we don't have to worry about them doing it. Here's a course study. I'm not going to go over all of those, obviously, but in the 2 years that they're there, the first year, you see you have all of these studies that they must complete. Then in the second year, you have this. So practically then every book of the Bible, plus other related topics, much like at the Memphis School of Preaching then, you see. In fact, Brother Peter Chin, who's the director, is a graduate of the Memphis School of Preaching, and he does just an excellent job. The history of the college is 1965. It began actually known as the Malaysian Christian College. This is on the Moulmein Road, located in Singapore. That building still stands. It's been remodeled. Unfortunately, the church there is no longer sound in the faith. I won't have time to get into all the trouble that happened. We finally settled on some of the things about that building. That took years and years and years. It wasn't settled until after Brother Rice actually passed away. But in 1969, they moved out to Pangol, and that was a very lovely place. It was right next to the Sea of China. And then the government decided, we want that land. So they practiced what's called the right of eminent domain, and they said, you've got to move. We will give you the fair market value of what this is, but you have to get off this property because we want it. And so we had to move. And so they moved to the present location. They moved there in 1991, and they built this building, which is really nice building. On the bottom floor, as you know, as I've said before, is the Chinese congregation. The second floor is the Singapore congregation. It speaks English. Chinese is in the Chinese language. On the top floor, then, is Four Seas College, and that's where the Christians meet and have their. A few years ago, you may notice there's an elevator that goes up to the third floor there for the people who have difficulty going up the stairs. The faculty and the staff, of course, Brother Peter Chin. He has been here several times. You may remember him. Probably, I think, has spoken here on occasions. He's now, of course, back. By the way, originally he is from Malaysia. He's Chinese, but he's from Malaysia. He's never been to China. You'd think maybe he needs to go with me, right? Maybe I'll talk him into that. Brother Robbie Andrews was the Dean of Academics. He's the medical doctor who was over there. He's a graduate of the Memphis School of Preaching. But now he's back in Alabama, and I believe practicing medicine. So he's no longer with us there. The secretary is Sister Pui Fan. That's Brother Peter's wife, Pui Fan Chin. By the way, Brother Mosier likes to refer to them as double chins. All right. That's Brother Mosier. Brother Eddie E., converted, baptized by Brother Rice many years ago, went to a Christian college in Korea, and then came back and has been working with the Jurong Church of Christ. He's been its main preacher down through the years, now serves as one of the elders. Here are the online instructors that we have. So in addition to the instructors who were there teaching, we have some teaching online. Brother Tim Hayes, Glenn Tattersall, by the way, from Australia, is teaching in Singapore. Brother Philip Van Winkle, who's now in Arkansas, Jason Hilburn in Alabama, and John Diamante from the Philippines. So you can see how just international this is. But also now we have Brother Jamie Long, who has also joined in with the online teaching. And we have a brother who is thinking, and he's from Texas, who is thinking about moving his wife and 4 children to Singapore in order to teach full-time, in other words, boots on the ground there, in order to teach. So it's going well. You have students in activity. I'll just rush through these. I see my time is about gone. But you can see the different countries. I won't go through there and name all of those, but again, that's that mutual fund aspect of that. The chapel hour, they start each morning, I think at 8:15 it is. They have special courses for the Christian woman. At times they have campaigns for Christ. They went into Malaysia 2012, and you'll notice all the people who gathered for the campaign, opportunity to teach and preach the gospel of Christ. Several churches now throughout Malaysia, by the way, with elders, by the way. We also have extension programs, not just teaching the students who come, but for the churches that are in the area, we'll go in and teach, as you've noted here down through the years, special courses on denominational dogmas, premillennialism, Christian evidences, hermeneutics, and on and on and on, God's plan for the marriage, how we got the Bible. Very good topics. Brother Peter Chin is just doing an excellent job. We have special courses for the ladies, equipping themselves, you see. Then we also had a brother come over, Brother Tim Wilkes, to teach the fishers of men, how to be involved in that is one-on-one Bible studies. They have that. By the way, interestingly, like in Singapore, a lot of the churches there, if they have visitors to services, they take them to another class designed to teach fundamentals, because that's what is needed. And I thought, here we might think, well, we're insulting them, but not there. They're teaching them. They're not members of the church. They've just come to visit, so they have special classes just for them. They just taught public speaking, of course. Then, as I mentioned, graduation down through the years. Some of the ones who have graduated. Brother David Chu, standing right by Brother Peter Chin there in the center. He was the director for many years. His name is David. His wife's name is Abigail. David and Abigail from the Old Testament, interestingly. And just some of the graduations that we've had. They allow me to give out the diplomas when I'm there. And just some of these pictures, I've had the privilege of meeting most of all these people. Of course, as you can see, I'm giving them that, but I mean spending a little time with them. We have the lectureship every year. I won't have the time to get back and talk about how that all began, but there used to be an Asian Bible lectureship, but that has continued on. I'm just going to get to the very end. These are some of the photos of the lectureships down through the years. But I just wanted to show basically the people. That's what we're centering in on. All of these ones that have come to go back out and to help spread the gospel. And so, you know, we don't know how many. We can count the seeds in the apple, right? But you can't count the apples that's in the seed. We don't know how many apples one seed may produce. When we put the seed then in these individuals, we don't know how many it may produce down through years to come. But thank you so much for your kind attention in here this morning.